set that up before so you don't have to worry about it. And then for the beginning,
because they didn't listen, and because they allowed him to continue to prey on girls and women, it became a movement.
So I was 12 when I started seeing Larry, and I remember the first time that he performed his so-called treatment. I went back to my dance studio that night and I asked girls if that was normal, if that was medical, and if he did that to them. And they basically assured me that it was normal, it was acceptable.
My story is a little bit different because I did tell my coach in '97, and she didn't report anything. Instead, she told Larry Nassar, and then so he knew about it, he confronted me about it. So I had these two adults tell me that I was wrong, and so I figured I must have a dirty mind. 20 years later, fast forward to, when I first heard the story, Rachel's story, and I was like, well, that happened to me, and I was told that it's legitimate treatment. I walked around Jennison Fieldhouse where I did gymnastics, and at that moment, just a flood of memories that I had pushed far down, hit me, and I was a wreck.
It depends on what time of day. I wake up every morning with horrible anxiety attacks that I never used to have. And I end my day pretty similarly. I've got glimpses throughout the day where I feel strong and proud of myself, but I just don't know who I am anymore.
Back then I didn't know I needed to defend myself. I think he preyed on my vulnerability, and I wish I could tell that 15-year-old girl to get up and run and not to trust him. But that's what kids do, right? They look at us and they trust us.
As crazy as it is, but I was abused at 16. And I still didn't know the difference, because I was being told, this is medical treatment. And then my mom was in the room, and people were like, well, how doesn't your mom know, or how doesn't your mom see?
In 2014, when I made my report, had they listened to me, we could have prevented a lot of harm. And he wouldn't have been able to hurt any more girls if they had taken me seriously 4 years ago.
It's easy for people on the outside to say, I would have known, I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have let my kid go there. But if you're not in the actual situation, you just can't know.
The mental anguish of the betrayal, I think that's harder than actually the physical that happened to me.
It also makes me want to run and hide. It makes me want to leave this state, this country. I'm constantly in a state of fight or flight, and I'm fighting, but the urge to run is there every day.
It just feels like I could have protected a lot of others had I realized, or had I not explained to them that he had done that to me, so it was okay. But I mean, that was my 14-year-old self, so.
The only people that are guilty here, it's not me, it's not my parents, it's Larry himself and all of the people who enabled him.
Finally, some of those conversations are happening, and there's been people in power for too long that have always been able to do whatever they want to do. Say what they want and do what they want and touch who they want and take what they want. And nobody's ever stood up and nobody's stopped them before, and that's still a big problem.
It's the one crime where the victim is the one who has to fight their case. Something was taken from you. Our dignity, our innocence in some cases was taken from us. How is it that we have to fight that?
It's unfortunate that so many girls have had to come forward and share their names and share their faces and like literally their entire lives with the whole world for a change to happen.
I have been given a unique position for whatever reason, that if I have the opportunity to speak out in a way that might help somebody else, I want to do that.
You know, women have to deal with some things all the time. I've just gotten normal to, and I know how to handle that situation. But I think the best thing that I can think is that this is going to help a lot of other little ones.
You would think in a case of child sexual abuse that the victim would be exempt from victim shaming and re-victimization in the media, and that's not the case. My testament in court, my victim impact statement, if you look up the YouTube comments on that, it's horrendous. Saying that they thought Larry had taste until they saw me, or that they didn't know Larry was into little boys until they saw me. Saying that I was so disgusting that I should be lucky that that doctor ever touched me. Perpetuating the idea that unless you're seen as an object of desire to someone, that they can't accept that you've been sexually abused, or if you don't look a certain way, that abuse doesn't happen to you. Which even at like, so we're talking about I was a kid.
I realized that since all this has happened, it's okay to not be okay. I guess that's some advice that I would give to people who have been affected by something like this. It's okay to cry, it's okay to lay in bed for days at a time or not shower for a few days. Like, that was definitely something that I did. But it's okay to not be okay.
How do you see little pieces of light that are gonna happen, and does that help?
It's weird. I see it in every little girl. I see it. My nieces.
Like, I'm not just Christine, like the victim of sexual abuse by Larry Nassar. Like, there's more to my story. And there's more to like every girl's story too. This isn't gonna be the one thing that defines them.
So for me, like the light is the practice. For me, becoming confident in being able to talk about this, and that it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be broken, it's okay to be hurting.
Sometimes it means faking it and going out into the world, and that's okay. But I think hiding in bed will only make things worse. Sometimes you gotta temporarily maybe, but then you get back up and you keep going forward.
I guess the things that have helped me get out of bed are my children. And knowing that I need to help them live. And I don't want them remembering me as the mommy who stayed in bed. I want them to remember me as being involved and standing up for what's right.
I think the more that we're willing to talk about it now, the more we can help and empower other people to hope that it won't happen again. And I think that's part of how I'm able to keep moving forward.
The advocacy work and like trying to make policy change, I think I'm using it in place of emotional processing. Definitely, like if I'm very honest with myself, but I'd rather do that than kind of sink it, because at this point I can't afford to fall back into where I was. Just throw myself in and I'll deal with it later. I know that's not healthy, but that's what I'm doing.
What do you do besides what we can do to start transforming our society from the bottom? Because from the top, it's a mess.
And I think it's really empowering to see a group of women come together and speak their truth and show other women that they can do that too.
This situation is not resolved at all. Like, Larry is in prison and will be in prison for the rest of his life. but so many people that looked the other way and covered for him, who sponsored these assaults, who funded his outreach at different organizations and allowed him to abuse women around the world, are still in power and are still being paid for what they've done.
There's always been a stigma about sexual abuse. There's always been this unspoken stigma that you should feel ashamed if you were abused, or you should be embarrassed that you allowed that to happen.
I think that we need a cultural shift. We need to stop blaming victims and start believing them.
I do have things to say, and I will never be silenced again. And now I have a focus to advocate for this. Don't forget when all the media is done. Don't forget these stories, because if you do, it's going to happen again.
So these people that are still there and who say that now they have a renewed commitment to creating a safe campus in Michigan State's case, like, that's cool, but that's not what needs to happen.
There's so much more to be done, but if we take this moment and turn it into a movement, we can do that. My message is that you're not alone. You are a survivor. You have been through the fire, and you should be proud of yourself for surviving, not ashamed for what happened to you. And predators and enablers, beware, because we are coming for you, and we will not rest until the culture has changed and sexual assault is seen as the horror that it really is.